Hello, everyone.
Hey there, folks.
This is Amanda.
This is Rita.
And you're listening to
I Don't Know Her,
the podcast about women you've probably never heard of.
But you should have.
And now you will.
All right. Hey.
Yeah, we're back.
We're back. We took a break. And for us, a break is a week.
A 1 week break, yeah.
Yeah. So we're good.
Yeah, we took a break and did the thing that we said. If you listen to our minisodes, if you're a Patreon subscriber, which thank you, you heard that the one thing we talked about was that we don't spend time together outside of the show. So we did.
We took a day.
Yeah, we took a day. I got a fucking amazing concealer at Sephora. So Tarte, if you want to sponsor us, I'll tell everybody about it.
I got anti-aging everything.
Yeah, we reached that age.
Oh, yeah.
We're like into that shit.
But it was so good. Like we had lunch and then we had liquid lunch. And just spent some time together and like aired out the sheets a little bit and just we don't get to do that a lot and it was so great.
We never get to hang out like on a weekend, like during the day. What?
Or that we're not like supposed to do something.
Yeah, it's not because we're doing something.
Yeah.
It's just because it was nice. It was really nice.
It was really fun.
Thank you for spending that time with me.
Oh, it was great. I loved it.
So tell me about work last night. I know a little bit, but I'd like to hear more.
Okay. So as you all know, I am a server and bartender, and we were welcomed last night into somebody else's space. And so, we call it someone else's house. It's home. So I show up and I'm just like, you introduce yourself. And when you go to somebody else's house, like how a normal person would go to someone else's house. Do you immediately go into their kitchen cupboards? No. It's rude. So you wait for direction. You just say, hi, my name is, and okay, where would you like me to be? Where am I most helpful? And I had 2 men that were my leads for my side of front of house. And they were just like, wherever you want.
From this other place.
So I'm in their house, their leads. I'm like, where would you like me? And they're like, wherever. And I'm like, that doesn't work for me. I'm like, okay, cool. So just standing in the middle of the room, like, ha ha ha. And they're like, oh, no, because I was being sarcastic. I was like, do you want me to stand in the middle of the room? And they're like, no, okay. So right here. Okay. And one of the guys said, what did I just tell you about the sweetheart? He told me.
Oh, are you asking me for real?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. You said something. They said something like, there won't be much for you to do here, sweetheart. Yeah.
So almost like dismissing my position of me coming in. Is my fucking day off, by the way.
I just don't understand why somebody would ever, would you say that to a man?
I would not at all.
Would he?
Yes.
I doubt very seriously that man would say sweetheart to another man.
Oh, to another man. Oh, I thought you meant to me. No. To another man, no.
Yeah, no, he wouldn't say that to another man.
No, it'd be welcoming a friend.
That would be weird.
Yeah.
He'd probably say like bro or dude if he was going to put a little affect on there.
So what I was looking for was direction because honestly, I'm very direct when I am working. And so I'm asking this of this person and he's like, there's not much for you to do here, sweetheart. And I said, in my head, I was like, seriously, this is how we're going to start this? When you're in that position of doing something where you're collaborating with another house, somebody has to be the lead. And so the lead obviously was being condescending to me. So then when it finally came to work time, he didn't step up. So then I just started doing it and did a great job. And the woman that was leading the entire event she showed up. Like she was literally like, this girl's amazing. She wanted to take a picture of me. And I was like, no. I was like, I look like shit right now.
She want to take a picture of you.
Because she was just like, Rita, she literally said to me, she's like, girl, you have a whole look. Can I take a picture? And I said, no. Yeah.
That's such a weird thing.
It was odd. But
was she white?
No, she was Like me. She's brown.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure it wasn't like a white person going, "You're so exotic."
No, it wasn't that at all. She was just like, you have a whole look. You have a whole vibe. Can I take a picture of you? And I was like, no. I was like, I take pictures. I'm not in the pictures. And she was like, I'm going to get you someday. I was like, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
I will be a blur. Yeah. But eventually it was me like leading, like, how dare you say that I'm not going to have anything to do? And also, then I'll just fucking leave.
Yeah. I was like, why didn't you just go? Okay, cool. Goodbye.
I really was like, I just wanted to turn to my boss and being like, you know what? Too many bodies. I'm going to go.
Yeah. Too many cooks in the kitchen kind of situation.
I felt kind of bad, like if I would just leave my people. So that's why I didn't do that. But it was so
It's demeaning.
But then also the woman who said you have a whole look, she's not entirely industry and she was barking orders at me. So I felt very much in the middle of being pulled on one side from a woman who didn't understand where I was coming from and what my job is, and being pulled from two people who know the industry but didn't think I was capable.
What gave them the idea? I mean, that's kind of a rhetorical question, but what gave them the idea that you didn't know what you were doing? Like, I don't understand the
maybe it was like a kind of a puff in the chest kind of thing. Like, we're going to show you how good our house is. And I'm like,
that male ego, man.
it was so frustrating. Like, honestly, you're right. If I was a man walking in there, I probably would have been welcomed.
Yes. And you would not be called sweetheart.
No.
And told there wasn't anything for you to do, as if your existence was meaningless.
No.
Because we don't treat men like that as a society. We don't treat them like they're useless when they walk into a space.
Yeah, and also just being pulled from the other side from a woman who looks like me, I feel like I can trust you, but then also getting treated not very well.
You know, I think there is this expectation that happens when anybody from a minority group sees another person from that same minority group. This assumption that, like, we're going to be coming from a same place or at least have a same starting point. And I always find it very disappointing when that's not true. An example is I knew this white lesbian who I thought was fine until there was a person in our running group who went by they, them, and came out to us as non-binary. And later on, and this was years and years ago, so I was like, nowhere near my own journey. And later on, she was like, that's so dumb. Doesn't even exist. I'm not going to call him, they, them. That's dumb.
What?
Yeah, and I just was like taken aback. I was like, I just didn't expect that this person who's been marginalized and treated like garbage for their identity would do that to another person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really upsetting.
Yeah. And also this woman, she kept saying, she's like, you just don't know. I'm really bossy. I'm really bitchy. I'm kind of a bulldozer.
So she was saying, I'm bitchy, I'm bossy, I'm a bulldozer, I'm a bulldog. To excuse away her behavior?
This woman was like, I'm a bulldozer. I'm a little bitchy. You know, nobody told you. I'm really bossy and I'm just really was said probably more than 10 times, which is a lot.
Yeah. And also at some point, are you saying it to you or are you saying it to me?
She was saying it directly to me.
Right. But she's saying it to herself. Like, that is her explaining away her behavior to herself.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not the nicest person. I can be a bitch. I can be a bulldozer. I can be all of those things. But when I'm in a work situation, especially when you have to be very direct because you're just honestly you're streamlining orders.
Yeah, well, it's also just not professional.
No.
I would never, in any professional situation, regardless of if it was a restaurant or a school or a company I worked for, I wouldn't walk in to do a training, for instance, and be like, hey, everyone, I'm really bitchy and bossy. You'll get used to it.
Yeah.
That would be weird and uncomfortable for everyone in the room and also inappropriate.
Yeah, and also, why did she feel like she had to explain away? She was being direct. just like I am direct.
Yeah.
And I didn't go in there and tell these guys, I'm a bitch.
Yeah. You didn't have to.
No, I just said,
this is what I do.
This is what I do. And what I was doing was doing it well. And she was just like on the other side. Then I had these dudes on the other side. And I was like, I am so uncomfortable.
Yeah, that would be stressful and uncomfortable.
I spent a lot of time with my hands in my pockets. I was just like, okay. But I didn't let anybody faze me. I was just like, I didn't wear anything on my face. I did not get loud. I was just like, nah, this is not worth it.
Isn't it nice to wear masks sometimes though? Because of that?
It so hides the face.
Yeah, I'm going to miss. I'm going to miss that I could just do the things that I do with my face and no one knows.
Yes.
Because I can't really hide how I feel when I'm looking at somebody. So if I like think they're dumb, or at least their question is dumb, it's all right here in the face. Mm-hmm. And I interact quite often with people that I think are missing a few. Yeah.
I think the only thing with the mask, though, is like my eyes get really wide. Because I'm just like, really? It's a really expression on my face. Really?
Yeah, I think I'm also glad I got bangs.
It was a really interesting experience because I had never been pulled in those two directions. Mm-hmm. It was two white men and an ethnic woman that were both making me feel like shit.
Yeah. Well, because it's like they're not the same, but you both like on one side it's like ugh, white men, but on the other side it's like this woman should understand more about where we're coming from. Mm-hmm. And I hate when they let us down.
Yeah. And then I was out of there as soon as I could fucking be out of there. I was like, okay, bye.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah. But I'm always glad when you share your experiences of things like that, because I think that they're incredibly common. And I think that's important. Like if somebody's listening to this right now and going, God, I've had a very similar experience where these people called me sweetheart and they basically assumed I couldn't do my job. Like I guarantee there are people right now listening to this going, yep, that's happened to me. And same with that, like this prototype bitch character that some often older women, I find.
She was older.
I would say like in their mid 40s and above, who use that as some kind of weapon or shield, depending on when they need it. Mm-hmm. That like it explains away their behavior, but it becomes like their entire personality, and they like sacrifice all of their depth to be this caricature of what a strong woman is. And that's like both of those are hard.
Very. And I feel sometimes what she was doing, like I see myself sometimes too. And I think maybe that's probably why it bothered me a little bit more, because I feel like I am getting more towards that instead of just being like confident in myself that I know what my job is and I know how to do this and I know how to do it well. I know that. But like seeing that, I was like, I can see like 3 miles down the road. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to be that?
Not if you prevent it from happening.
All right.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
For today's
I'm excited about this one because I know how many hours you spent.
So many hours, let me tell you. I'll get to the reason why. In fact, I'm actually going to start with my sources.
Okay.
So I read a comprehensive biography of this person. It's called Curveball, The Remarkable Story of Toni Stone, the first woman to play professional baseball in the Negro Leagues, by Martha Ackman. I also used an article for the Hardball Times called The Negro League's Last Hope, 3 Brave Women by Mary Craig. Toni Stone, Connie Morgan, and Mamie Johnson are the Negro League stars you need to know about by Mike Freeman for USA Today. I also used the website Society for American Baseball Research. They had a biography on there, but more importantly, they had a really great research article by a woman named A.J. Richard called Playing with the Boys, Gender, Race, and Baseball in Post-War America. So that gives you a little hint on what we're talking about.
Sounds really deep.
So I'm going to tell you the story of Marcinia Lyle Tomboy Toni Stone.
That's a great name.
She was the first woman to play professional baseball. Period.
First ever.
Basically, like she was on an actual professional baseball team. She was on the roster and played.
Nice.
It specifically was a team in the Negro Leagues, though. So Marcinia Lyle Stone was born on July 17th, 1921 in Bluefield, West Virginia. Her parents were Boykin and Willa Stone. I think Boykin is just a fun name.
I think Boykin and Willa could be a restaurant name.
You know what? Yeah.
Yes. Or a bar.
Yeah. Her father was a graduate of the Tuskegee Institute, which was a school for Black men, particularly at the beginning, and it was headed by Booker T. Washington. He learned the trade of barbering there, and he also served in the Army during World War I. Her mother, Willa, was also a hairdresser when she met Tony's father, so the two of them had that in common. And after the war, they had 4 children pretty closely together, 3 girls and 1 boy.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's a lot of girls.
So when Toni was 10, it was about that time. It's the early, so it's basically the heart of the Great Depression. During this time, there is the Great Migration of Black families from the South to the North.
Yeah.
Which is, has a lot to do with Jim Crow, but also the Great Depression, also industrialization. So they move to the Rondo neighborhood of St. Paul, Minnesota. And her parents opened a barber shop, which I did not know this at the time, but it was actually quite common for Black folks to own barber shops that catered exclusively to white clients.
Really?
Yeah. Because you have this perception of the Black barbershop being so central to Black communities.
It's such a cornerstone for their community. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was apparently quite common at the time to have Black barbershops that only served white clients.
It's because they want to be served by people of color.
Well, that's the white people's reason, but anyway, like some of them, they didn't specifically say her parents did this, but some of these Black-owned barbershops would turn away Black patrons.
Oh, wow.
And tell them, enforce segregation. And you can't really pass judgment necessarily because it's you're trying to make a living and this is the law and you're trying to follow it.
Yeah.
So it actually wasn't the law though in Minnesota. But it was the understood, it's culturally, the cultural law. So I found some interesting, cool things about St. Paul. In the majority of my source was the Curveball book. It was her biography. And the author had this tendency to go on some pretty long tangents in the book. And one of them ended up being a little bit about St. Paul and the Black community there at the time. And I actually found it to be really interesting because St. Paul obviously is a mostly white area of the country, St. Paul, Minneapolis. And they only had 1.5% of the population was Black. But that Black community was all pretty closely linked together in a tight-knit community in that Rondo neighborhood.
1.5%, man.
Yeah.
That is so low.
I mean, it's 2% here. So
True.
it's a similar, I would say, a similar demographic. But here's a really interesting fact. According to the Tony's biographer, St. Paul had a larger percentage of Black-owned homes than any other city in the country. So you may have a smaller population, but the majority of them own their own home. Unlike in areas where they had less home ownership because of redlining and things like that. I thought that was kind of neat and cool to hear. So it was better, obviously, to be in St. Paul than in the Deep South. But Toni and her family obviously still were subjected to some pretty terrifying racism. I think shortly before they moved there had been a pretty well-known lynching.
Oh.
It was called the Duluth lynching. And she and her family would hear white people pass by in cars and yell N-words at them and other racist slurs.
So not a safe place at all.
Nowhere was safe
at
the time. And of course, not every establishment served Black folks. So it was just that situation where it's better than where we were, but it's not great.
Yeah.
Or even good. But so Toni spent a lot of time playing sports. That was like her way of having an outlet. And I believe she went to a mixed race school, but she was one of the only black students there. So Toni was a natural athlete. She excelled at every sport she tried, including track and field, football, softball, baseball, ice skating.
Well-rounded athlete.
Yeah, she was just basically a born athlete. And she was pretty rough and tumble. She did not back down from a fight. Her upbringing reminds me a little bit of stuff you've talked about. She also wore pants to school, which was really different at the time. Most girls wore dresses, and she was like, nah. So she wore pants all the time, and her hair was fairly short. And so because of the way she dressed and the way she behaved and the sports she played, her nickname became Tomboy.
That sounds about right.
And that's all anybody called her. Like, no one ever called her Toni. Or, well, actually, her name wasn't Toni at this point. Her name was Marcinia. So nobody called her Marcinia. They called her Tomboy.
Okay.
So she was just known as Tomboy Stone. And her mom did not like this.
Oh, no.
Her mom seemed like she was really into appearances.
Oh, I have no idea what that feels like.
Yeah.
At all.
They liked to be talked about in the little society pages, like Mrs. Boykin Stone invited June Ellis to their house and they had tea and blah, blah, blah.
Gosh.
And their daughters entertained on the piano or whatever, you know.
I just got a flashback of being shoved into white tights and a dress and just writhing, trying to get out of it.
Well, you're going to feel her heart on this one. So her mom really didn't like the way she dressed, didn't like that she liked to play sports. She didn't like that she was rough and tumble. She didn't like that she didn't, wear dresses and look cute and say all the right things. And so at one point her mom was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do this. I want to get her in a sport that's more feminine. It's going to help her.
Okay.
So that's when she enrolled her in ice skating.
Okay.
So Toni is an incredible athlete. So she gets out there and she just fucking nails it. Has one citywide competition in her entire time, wins it, and then is like, I'm done. Literally went home,
check,
hung up her skates, and grabbed her baseball glove and ran out the door. That was what she wanted to do. She wanted to play baseball. And baseball really wasn't an acceptable place because girls aren't supposed to play baseball.
Okay.
It's like if you wanted to play football, I think there's a really big disconnect for me because I was never into baseball. Whenever I would hear it, people in movies and on television or whatever call baseball America's pastime, that made no sense to me. Because in my area growing up, it was football or it was basketball.
Same, honestly.
And, those were our sports. And especially basketball. We killed at basketball. So that was the thing you did. And of course we have winter 9 months out of the year. So you can play basketball in a gym year round and then outside on the
you have a
summertime.
month of baseball.
Yeah, our baseball was it's constantly, who cares?
We were a big football team, a football town.
Yeah. So for me, I don't have that same connection to it. So it seems strange to me that everybody was so tied up in her being a girl trying to play baseball. But if I thought about it as football, I could understand.
Way different story.
People definitely have a weird thing about girls playing football. And of course there's contact and that's one of the issues. But it was basically the same thing. They're like, girls are going to get hurt. They're too dainty to play baseball. Because honestly, those real pitches and stuff, they hurt like hell.
And also they'd have to wear the same uniforms as the boys and
yeah, you couldn't have that.
Yeah, no. So
she really wanted her to move away from trying to play baseball because it was unladylike. But Tomboy was just really I don't know, she marched to the beat of her own drum. She didn't seem to really care.
And also, if your parent is you're not going to do this, I don't want you to do this, what's the first thing you want to do?
Well, she would like get in trouble, like serious trouble. And her parents were very strict. And this is the era, and this is a community and a culture in which you listen to your parents. That is expected. And they're Catholic, which I also thought you'd be.
Oh, the wound.
Thought you'd find some relation to.
Oh, yeah.
But good thing they were Catholic.
Why?
Because her biggest supporter ended up being her priest.
Really?
Yes, his name was Father Keefe, and he was a white man who was the priest of a fairly large Black Catholic congregation. And he would listen to her confessions, because she'd have to go to confession for like skipping school or like spitting on a kid during a baseball game.
Oh my gosh.
And
did I ever tell you that I used to, my first confession, my sacrament, my first confession, I didn't have anything to say, so I lied about my sins because I had no fucking sins.
So then you had to go to confession for your confession?
I lied in confession. I was like, I stole money.
Maybe you were just seeing into the future. So Father Keefe convinces her parents, because he's seen her play. She's really, really good. He's like, I think you should allow Tomboy to play baseball for the Catholic Boys League.
That's, oh gosh, I bet her parents didn't like that either.
Yeah, but when there's a priest telling you, I see a lot of potential in her. What harm could it do? Maybe she'll, behave better and do better in school, which she did for a while.
Okay.
Playing baseball in this boys league really did help her for a while. So for the first time in what would be many subsequent times, Tomboy broke a gender barrier by playing on a boys' baseball team and doing very well at it. Not only did the neighborhood take notice of her talent, but she's playing in a Catholic boys' league, so they play other Catholic teams across the city and potentially in the state. And so she starts to really get noticed.
Well, yeah, I'm sure people are going to be talking.
Well, she's really good. She's a terrific hitter. So she gets covered in the newspaper a lot. And they ended up naming her one of St. Paul's best female athletes.
Wow.
She also didn't have great equipment. So her abilities are even more astounding to me, because her family was like, we'll allow you to play, but we're not going to pay for this shit. And so she scraped together pennies to be able to buy herself her own glove, which she got at Goodwill, a used glove at Goodwill for 25 cents.
That just breaks my heart. It's like, not only are you trying to do this extraordinary thing, but then having no support.
So she didn't have the money and couldn't ask for the money to get proper baseball shoes, which are usually some form of cleat, right?
Yeah, which can lead to an injury.
Yes. So she was like playing in basically the version of Keds that was around then.
Oh, God.
She's playing in some really bad shoes. But she's enjoying herself. She's really loving playing in this boys' league baseball. And she was doing much better in school than she had been prior. So her parents, I think that might have been part of the deal. Like, if we enroll you in this league, you have to do well at school. She was reading a lot, but not always what she was supposed to be reading for school. She would go to the public library and check out all the books on baseball and read them all. So she would read about like baseball rules and baseball plays and biographies of players and, their batting average. She could like...
That's really awesome. That's like learning strategy.
Oh, for sure. She's absorbing as much as she can, but she's understanding that like she's really not going to be better without real coaching. And here's what was frustrating her. The coach of the boys' league that she was on, the team that she was on, would like, let's say your son was continuously missing at the plate. And they would walk over and they'd say, okay, well, your stance is off and you need to make sure you've got your toes pointed in this direction and hold your elbows out this way.
The mechanics, yeah.
Right. They never spoke to her one-on-one. The coach never, ever approached her. He would go around and help coach every single boy on the team and ignore her like she wasn't there.
She's out there on her own.
Basically.
Yeah.
And she wanted to get better. So she did this thing that is insane, but very brave. She had heard that this guy, Gabby Street, was going to be in town. You probably don't know him unless you're a big baseball person. I had to look him up.
I was going to say Gabby Street. Interesting name.
Yeah, it's racist. Anyway.
Oh.
So she heard that Gabby Street was going to be in town working with what was then the twins, the Minneapolis twins, like the St. Paul Minneapolis twins. But they were, it was at that time they were a farm team. They were not a major league team at the time, I don't believe. So he was coming to do a baseball clinic with them. So Gabby had been a player in the major leagues, or maybe even the minor leagues, I can't recall. And he was a pretty mediocre player, but he had been a really good baseball manager, and he'd managed a couple of teams.
Oh, okay.
He eventually led then the St. Louis Cardinals to 2 National League championships and a world title.
Well, hell, he knows a little bit of what he's doing.
Yeah, he really knows what he's doing. That's why they've invited him to do this baseball clinic.
Yeah.
And there must have been either officially a thing that said, like, if you're a local high school boy or whatever player and you want to come watch or take part, or they just all showed up because it was the time, because it was, I think it was advertised in the paper that he was coming. Side note, he's also a member of the KKK.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, I don't love this guy.
Real itchy and awkward.
Yeah, I don't love this guy. And it was pretty well known that he was in the KKK.
Okay.
So people just, I guess, thought that was okay.
Well, I mean, what year is it right now at this time?
Gosh, I think she's 14. So
1930.
Yeah, she was born in 21. So I think it's 35.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's a member of the KKK, and that's not necessarily important, but I think it's always important.
Yeah.
That this pretty well-known,
he doesn't get to lose that part of his history.
Yes. It seems like there were folks, and he might have been one of them, who were members, and I use that term loosely, for business reasons. Like, this is how they could get in and get more business or whatever. But I'm like, gross.
You're still...
You're going to compromise any kind of... But he was still racist as shit. In fact, his name, Gabby, everybody always thought it was because he was talkative on the plate. Mm-hmm. But it had something to do with black men being talkative, or I don't know. I couldn't quite get the story.
So
and
there's
I didn't
a
really
connotation
care.
there that, yeah.
Yeah. So it makes it all the more, I think, brave that Tomboy decides to ride her bike all the way to Lexington Park, where Gabby Street is. And she just like parks her bike and walks in. And there are all these white boys, and, you know, Gabby is working with them, and she just like walks straight up and is like, "Hi, I want to learn more about baseball." And he was like...
Was she well received, or...
No. He was like, "No, get the fuck out of here." And he shoos her away, and she leaves, and then she comes back, and he shoos her away again, and then she leaves, and she comes back.
Oh my gosh.
And he shoos her away again. And then she leaves, and she comes back. And he was like,
"Fine.
Okay, I'm impressed with your persistence." This is exactly what he said. "I just couldn't get rid of her until I gave her a chance. Every time I chased her away, she would go around the corner and come back to plague me again."
Good on her for being so young, but still being so persistent.
And he told her, "All right, you think you got some stuff?" And she was like, "I do." And he goes, "All right, go on that field and show those boys up."
All right.
And that's what she did. And he was fucking impressed. He was like, you know, she got real game. She knows what she's doing. He told her to come back with a proper glove and some cleats.
Where's she going to get that?
And he had said that to her, and she felt pretty crestfallen. And I think that she'd showed up a couple of times after he'd said that. And, she had her Goodwill glove, so I guess that would count. But he did not. He was like, "What are you wearing on your feet?" So finally she confessed to him that she couldn't afford cleats. And a couple of weeks later, as she was celebrating her 15th birthday, Gabby Street gave her a pair of baseball cleats, which she would wear for the entirety of her career.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that Tomboy wasn't a great student. It seems like she may have had some kind of undiagnosed learning disorder, because she was an avid reader. In addition to her baseball books, she also loved the Chicago Defender, which was an all-black newspaper that was produced out of Chicago. And she would read it every week. So she was a reader, but she didn't perform well in school. And so she ended up actually going to like a special junior high. And she didn't love that.
Yeah.
So she was really embarrassed by that and, felt really singled out. But she had some really supportive teachers there, and with their help, like, she did really well on the school sports teams, because the teachers there recognized that she had a lot of talent. And they were like, "Let's get you in some sports." Mm-hmm. And she ended up lettering in 3 sports, which was the first for a girl. That never happened.
That's so hard to do.
Yeah.
So hard.
She lettered in, I believe it was like high jump, and I can't remember what the third one was. And then one of them was diamond ball, which was like a very Minneapolis form of softball. Mm-hmm. She hated softball though. She was like, "Why is this ball so large? Why do I have to throw it underhand?" So she actually, after the summer, so she went and did this school with Gabby Street, and it was like, "I don't want to do school anymore at all." And so she eventually drops out without earning her high school diploma. And she really decides that I want to focus all my attention on playing baseball professionally. That's her goal. And of course, everybody's like, "That's ridiculous. You'll never do that."
It's risky, but.
So the first thing that she did is she went to the local barnstorming team. We've talked about barnstorming teams so often on this show, but just to reiterate, a barnstorming team at the time were these athletic teams. They could be basketball or football or baseball, but they're very common in baseball, where they would go to small to mid-sized cities all over the country, generally in the Midwest and East, and they would put on shows. They would play games. They would play like a baseball game, but there would also be like entertainment built into them. And so we did our first live show, our first and only live show. I talked about Jackie Mitchell, who was a teenage girl who played on a barnstorming team. She played on the House of David, which so does Toni at some point, although she can't really recall. So she went to the local one, which is the Twin City Colored Giants, which is an all-black barnstorming team. She started out, she just went there and she was like, "I'll do whatever you want me to do." And they're like, "Sweet. You can swag, go pick up balls." So she was a ball shagger. But once the manager saw her talent when she would like throw for them during practice, he put her on the roster. The team was made up most of older men who were former semi-pro players. So that meant the team only traveled on the weekends because the men had to have full-time jobs during the week.
Oh, okay.
She was just 16 years old.
I was going to say, how old is she right now? She's so young.
She's 16 and she's traveling around with these semi-professional baseball, like older men in cars.
This does not sound like, honestly, that does not sound like fun at all.
It doesn't sound great. Also, like if I were a mom, I would be pretty uneasy about that.
Yes.
And of course, they didn't like these barnstorming teams. They're like, as scrappy as you can get. And so they were driving around in like station wagons with a little trailer hitch to the back. Like that's how the team traveled. So of course, having a girl on the team was a novelty. And that was a strategy to put her on the team to try to bring more people in to come watch the girl play. And it seems like she doesn't necessarily mind that. As long as they understand she's actually a talented ball player as well. And Tomboy really was good at what she did, and she did bring in crowds. So it was like a win-win. Her parents were not happy about it, but she started earning a little bit of money doing it. And so they were like, okay, well, at least you're earning some money.
At least you're bringing in some cash. Yeah.
So she played with the Color Giants for a little bit, and then she moved from barnstorming team to barnstorming team, just playing as much as she could with any team who would take her. And she wasn't earning much money. And she also started to realize that she was like wasting her prime years as an athlete. You know, it's like her late teens and early 20s. That's like when you're going to be at your fittest. And
you're not going to be 35 and throwing them out of the park.
So she's like, I got to do something different. You know, she's starting to get restless. And her parents were also like, okay, your fun is done. It's time to settle down and be an adult. Like, you need to get married. You need to have children. You need to do this. So that may have been one of the reasons why a 45-year-old man decided he was her suitor. Tomboy made it very clear to William Gillespie that she was not interested in him.
Yeah.
But he kept at it. I would say his behavior was definitely harassment, not like courting. Yeah. Courting is when you drop off some flowers or whatever. Harassment is when you continue to show up after someone tells you they're not interested.
Yeah.
So one night he attacks her. He jumps her, he throws her down, he kicks her in the face. I'm sure there was more done to her.
Oh my gosh.
And he was arrested for attacking her. And when the judge asked why he did it, he said, because there were no witnesses.
Ew. What a fucking bastard.
Right. His sentence was 60 days in a workhouse.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
I'm sure he went on to be a fine gentleman.
Was she really injured, like lasting injuries or anything? Or
it doesn't say. I mean, she also...
I mean, other than mentally.
She's very cagey about some of this stuff. We know this happened partially because it was reported, like in the news. Mm-hmm. But we're going to talk about some stuff later that we don't really know what happened. Certainly more was happening than what she was letting on.
Okay.
So shortly after this, Tomboy is like, I need to get the fuck out of Minnesota. Because this is the kind of shit that's going to continue. I don't know if it was specifically this guy or she was restless about baseball. If it was all of the above, she needed to get away from her family, start over. She decided, I'm gone. I'm not going to do this anymore. Her sister had joined the army and was living in San Francisco. So that seemed like, fine, I'll just move there. So in 1943, she's around 22, maybe 23. She moves to San Francisco. She decides to have a brand new identity and renames herself Toni. She finds odd jobs in shipyards. This is at the time when World War II is happening. So lots of jobs are open to women that were previously not open and would later close. And so she was doing all kinds of odd jobs, working in shipyards, driving trucks and stuff like that. And she was making money. And then on the weekends, she was playing ball wherever she could play games.
Yeah, I know people who still do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they work, and then they do their, side hustle.
She hung out at a place called Jack's Tavern, and that was a really popular night spot for Black people in San Francisco. And when she was there, she met a man named Aurelius Pescia Alberga, which is quite a name. He was an older man who had fought in World War I. He had lots of stories and he loved to tell them. He seems like a very entertaining man. And he also, so after, I don't know, nights and nights of hearing Alberga's stories, Toni started talking about her time playing on a barnstorming team and traveling around in these station wagons in these mid-sized cities and getting stranded in the middle of the road.
Trading stories.
And he's just like fucking enamored with this. He thinks this is the most, the coolest shit he's ever heard.
Yeah.
And, she's talking about my real dream. And he's like, I want to help you. He decides he's going to help find a spot on a team for her. And he knew the Black veterans who ran the American Legion team. And he was like, I got a girl for your team. Here's the catch, though. You might know this already. American Legion teams were meant for young men, as in 17 or younger.
Yeah.
So Toni also reinvented her age and said that she was 16 instead of 26.
Pass.
I guess.
Made it?
So
I wish I could pass for 16 when I was 26.
I think I probably could have, actually. People often mistook me for a student when I taught middle school.
Oh, boo-hoo.
So playing on an American Legion team was actually a really smart move because scouts were always coming to American Legion games to find new talent. And her team wasn't very good, though. It landed in the bottom of the league. But she did catch the attention of another team. It was a local semi-pro team in the Peninsula Baseball League. So she joined that semi-pro team, and that meant that once again, she was the first and only woman to play Bay Area baseball with men. Toni's ultimate goal was to land on a pro team. So that's like her big goal. And she knows she's on this semi-pro team, but that's not good enough.
Yeah.
And her Legion coach had some connections. So she went to him, and he suggested that she try for the all-male San Francisco Sea Lions, which was a black semi-pro barnstorming team.
So as far as like wanting to reach the pros, is it just because she knows that that's like the end all be all for her? Okay.
Yep. She envisions herself playing legit professional ball.
Okay.
So that's what her goal is. And I'll get to this in a little bit. But for her, the professional teams are the Negro League teams because the baseball was segregated, right?
Yeah.
There were no black players at this moment in time that she's trying to move up. So she meets this guy, Harold Morris. He owns the Sea Lions, and he sees in her an opportunity to increase ticket sales by putting a woman on the roster. And this team, the Sea Lions, was exactly the kind of team that I was talking about earlier that likes to put on a show. We're talking about a time in which people who have differing abilities or differing bodies are seen in like as sideshows. And so Harold Morris had just that. He had a man on the team who had dwarfism. He was not only a dwarf, he also had lost his hands and feet. That they had been amputated after he'd had a really terrible illness as a child. So he was nicknamed Little Sammy Workman, and he would put on a show at between I think the third and fourth inning, where he would a couple of players would go out there and he would pitch, he would hit, he would run. But he was really fucking cool and good at it. And people were always really wide-eyed about it. He actually wore shoes on his knees, and that's how he ran. And he would wear the shoes backwards to keep his balance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really innovative and cool. But this isn't great. So Harold Morris would then announce over the thing that their little Sammy Workman is trying to raise money to go to college, and they would pass around a tin.
Oh, and he wouldn't get it, would he?
No, and it wasn't for college. It was just for the team.
Oh my gosh. That is such exploitation.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I will say, I think he's kind of doing the same thing with Toni. So he's paying her $200 a month. She plays second base, and they're traveling across the country, and she finds out that she's making less than the men on the team. Obviously. Not
a surprise.
But I think she feels like this is what you have to do to get to where you're going to go. So Toni was hopeful that this would be the opportunity because she would be seen a lot more places playing for this team and by a lot more fans. So she was really hopeful that this was going to be the opportunity that she would need to be seen by the major leagues. So right around this time, Jackie Robinson had broken the color barrier and joined the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947. And she kind of thought, well, why not a woman?
She's been doing it for a minute.
And she had a lot of reason to be optimistic. Toni was becoming quite a local celebrity in the Bay Area, like she'd kind of been in Minneapolis. But this was the actual city newspapers were writing about her in columns in the sports pages about what a good player she is. So she really knows that she's got the skills, but she wants to get on the team where she can hone those skills. The probably the other shitty thing about this Harold Morris guy is that he also would only put her in for a few innings, 4 at most.
Okay.
So she wanted to play longer, and he was like, no, we want to have you in long enough for the audience to get their thrills, but we want the men to really play.
She's the showpiece.
And she also, you know, she's, again, traveling with men. She's playing a men's game, and she can't use a men's locker room. So they wouldn't, you know, she couldn't go in the locker room. It would have been weird and inappropriate for her, and I'm sure it caused a lot of issues. So she would often go knock on the umpire's door, and they would let her in, and she could change in the umpire's room. But if they were ever not available or whatever, she would sometimes have to change on the bus. And like, that doesn't feel good.
No.
It's like anybody could like walk by and see you.
Well, and she's still so part of the team, and it's like when you're separated by facilities that are not even provided for you, you're not even given like a bathroom stall.
Right.
You're just like, you're shit out of luck. Sorry, change outside.
Yeah, you can't even come inside to change.
No.
When the team arrived in New Orleans to play the Creoles, people lined up to get her autograph and shake her hand. Like, people were waiting specifically for her, especially kids. Kids were really into seeing her. So this warm reception was in stark contrast to the vivid and violent racism of the Jim Crow South that she was entering. So it's important to note that while she was playing on all black teams, there were sometimes white audience members, or the teams were traveling through the South. They would, she and the other players were called watermelon, cotton picker, of course, the N-word. But the thing I thought was most disturbing, and that she also found disturbing, and some of the other players did as well, in the stadium for the Creoles in New Orleans, it was called the Pell. It also was home to the Pelicans, which was their white team, minor league team.
Okay.
The area in the grandstands that was reserved for black fans was caged in with chicken wire.
Seriously? Oh, that's disgusting.
To make it appear as though black people are literal animals, like, who have to be caged in.
Caged, yeah.
So despite this horrible racism, Toni was actually really intrigued by New Orleans and by the Creoles, and specifically by their owner, Alan Page, who was like watching her with hawk eyes the whole time she was playing. And there was also something going on the bus with the Sea Lions and Toni.
Okay.
It was never elaborated on, but other players remarked on there being tension.
Okay.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what happened. But for whatever reason, she left the Sea Lions in the middle of the season and joined the New Orleans Creoles.
It was bad enough that she needed to leave.
She fucking left, like, basically, you know, I mean, she's not moving to New Orleans, but she's kind of moving to New Orleans. So playing with the Creoles meant that Toni needed to brace for a lot more racism and danger than she had before, because San Francisco was loosely segregated, and it was, of course, like the sort of standard racism, but it was nothing like New Orleans. And then obviously the Creoles played mostly in the South. So before, she'd been playing mostly in the West and the Midwest, and now she was going to play almost exclusively in the South. Yikes.
And also that, like, even makes it more evident that something was really wrong.
Yeah, that she would change.
Her to choose this.
So her, like, the way it was so wild. It was like even people who thought they were not being racist would be just obviously racist. Like, there was a story about how a fan in the stand of the Creoles was like, get that N-word girl, like, told her, like, get it, you know, like, you go get him kind of thing. Like, it was supposed to be like a cheer to help her.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, my mouth was literally just open like 4 inches. My jaw just dropped.
Yeah, so like this is what I mean. Is like it is beyond the pale. Like this guy said this to her. His son later on, like after the game, was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, my dad said that," and she had to be like, "Oh, I actually didn't hear it."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
just to make the room feel comfortable and
she really had a hard time fitting in with the team. They forced her to sit in the back of the team bus on top of the wheel well. Where the windows didn't open, and it's the South in the summer. So that was cool. She played out the rest of the season with the Creoles and managed to bat a respectable average of .265. So I had to look up how batting averages work.
Oh no.
Because I just legit did not know.
I don't know.
But for just as a reference, because I'm not going to go into the details, I did figure it all out and I know the formula now, but yeah, you got it. So, but the MLB, the Major League Baseball, they had a little thing on their website that said league-wide, the batting average for men in the major leagues, the batting average is between .25 and .275. So she's right at the top end of that.
Okay.
So during her second season with the Creoles, she really began to get noticed, and she even made it into her favorite black newspaper, the Chicago Defender. A headline on like the sports page. Her dad opens up the Chicago Defender and is like, "Whoa!" Because there's a headline on the sports page that says, "New Orleans lady second sacker is sensation of Southern League."
I bet her dad was like, was he proud? Was he happy?
He was
okay,
excited.
cool.
They were pretty damn excited that their special kid
yeah, right.
made the sports page. And the story was pretty complimentary of her skills, but it's always peppered with sexism. Like for one part, I
already know what this. Okay,
they called her a shapely lass who was, quote, too busy for romancing. But they also repeated the lie that she was a teenager because that's what they thought she was. Because that's what her age became when she was in the American Legion, and she just kept lying.
Too busy for romancing.
Too busy. She's a shapely lass. By the end of the season, she actually raised her batting average to .300, which is considered to be a good batter, well above the common range that is in the league. But this wasn't yet professional ball. This is semi-pro. And barnstorming, which meant that travel was difficult. And the teams, when you travel as a barnstorming team, you have to do everything. You had to take care of the field. Like, you had to manage the field before you got on. You had to...
That's like work study.
Oh, yeah.
You want this library? Fucking clean it.
You had to carry and service your own equipment. And it also meant that, like, there was no doctor or medic or anything for the team. So people who got injuries, they were, like... rubbing them down with some weird shit. Like
Vaseline.
Weird shit. No, they had a liniment oil or whatever that was. It's like really gross. And then they at one point had coal ash in gashes, like if you had a gash.
No.
Incidentally, I'm not sure if it was while she was with the Creoles or if it was before or after this, but she had a pretty significant injury once when a man, again, I don't know if this is on another team, if it was her team or what. Yeah. But, when you slide into a base, you're required to have your feet pointed down so that you don't hurt the baseman, right? Yeah. So this guy very intentionally, who didn't even need to slide, but chose to slide at second base when she was on it, and just stuck his cleats right in her shin.
Ugh. Yeah, there's a way to avoid that.
Oh, yeah, he very much did it intentionally. He wanted her off the field. It's pretty gross. So she is part of this team. They have to, like, do their own shit. And it also meant that this one time when she was knocked out cold, she had tried to catch a fastball, and it, tore through her glove and, broke 3 of her fingers.
That's a really fast fastball. Jeez.
Yeah, and it knocked her unconscious, and they used cold water. That was their whole remedy.
The remedy? What about the broken fingers?
That was actually, I forgot. That was a different one. That was another time when she caught a really fast line drive. She broke her fingers.
Okay.
So Toni was also aware that being a woman and playing and traveling with men, that she was at risk. Mm-hmm. And on her own. So it was very rare for her to ask for help about a situation. She was a kind of take charge, I can handle my own battles kind of person.
And why else would you want to like give them another reason to look down at you or make fun of you? Look, she can't do it on her own kind of thing.
So it had to be bad for her to go to the team manager.
Okay.
I don't know what the extent of it was. I don't know what the details were. But she went to the team manager and said, this guy is sexually harassing me and it needs to end. And the guy was like, what do you want me to do about it? You're on a men's team. Figure it out. So she came prepared. And the next time it happened, she took a bat to his head.
Take care of it.
She was like, I thought I was going to get arrested, but I guess he never told anybody.
Yikes.
I mean, if you're willing to take a bat to someone's head, and it sounded like it was a pretty brutal beating that she laid on this man.
He was doing something.
He was doing something
Fucked.
I don't know if it was out of like she wanted some safety. Maybe it was, because she was at this point an unmarried woman and that was a whole other thing. I don't know if she needed some safety, convenience. Maybe she was in love with him. It's very hard to tell, but she decided to marry Aurelius Pesce Alberga, that old man who helped her get on that American Legion team.
Really?
They married in December of 1950 when he was 67 and she was 29.
Really?
Yeah. It's a weird situation.
It's a really odd situation.
And
like you said, maybe safety situation. I don't know. Did she seem like in what you found that she loved him or?
It's hard to say. She stays with him until he dies.
Okay.
And he lives to be old as fuck. So, I mean,
who knows?
I don't know, but they had separate bedrooms from the start. They never lived together. Like, not really. And, in fact, he gave her the larger bedroom.
Might have just been an understanding.
She called him Pa.
It might have just been an understanding of just being like, you know what? I need you. You need me.
I hardcore vibe think she's queer, but there's no evidence of that except for one thing I'll get to later.
Okay.
So that first year of their marriage, he said, I don't want you to play ball anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, which made me not like him. So she did sit out the 1951 season, but she just couldn't stay out of the game. And so she also knew, like, okay, she spent this 1 year out and realized, like, it is now or never. If I want to make my ultimate dream happen, I cannot be sitting out seasons. She was heading into her 30s, although everybody else thought she was in her 20s. And she knew it was just like, this was it. And it was also going to be her only real shot at being in the Negro Leagues. So I'm going to pause for a second on her story and just talk about some background of what's happening. So this is the time at which, you remember I mentioned earlier that all the men are gone because they're fighting the war. And so all of a sudden, all these women have options, right, that they didn't have before. Well, one of them was that there was a professional women's baseball league, which you've probably seen the movie A League of Their Own.
Oh, yeah.
It is based on the All-American Girls Baseball League. So the AAGBL had very strange requirements. As if you remember from the movie, it was kind of touched on. But you had to have a certain look.
You had to be put together. You had to have etiquette. You kind of like had to be a model that played baseball. Right.
So they would find girls who were talented and then send them to finishing school.
Yeah. So you could be a well-rounded, proper lady baseball player.
And they had an actual beauty standard that you had to meet. And guess who's not included in that?
Our Lady.
Anyone black.
Yeah.
Because the beauty standard started at first and foremost as white. You have to be white to be beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
According to their beauty standard. So there was never ever going to be a woman of color in the All-American Girls Baseball League. And at this point, the Negro Leagues are in decline in the 1950s because Jackie Robinson broke that color barrier in 1947, and now more and more skilled black players were being pulled from the Negro Leagues and moving into Major League Baseball.
black male players, though.
Yes. Well, at the time, she's not even in the Negro Leagues, and there's no women in it. So in addition to picking off some of their best players, you might recall from season 2, episode 26, when I spoke about Effa Manley. She was the woman who owned the Newark Eagles.
Yes.
She, as these white teams are coming and picking off these black players, they're, one, not honoring their contracts, and two, paying them significantly less than what they're worth.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the first person who stands up and says, hell no, you are not doing that. You're not doing that to me, and you're not doing that to him. But a lot of the Negro League teams lost a lot of players and a lot of money. So there's like a cascading effect that happens. One, they're losing their players to the major league teams. Two, the teams themselves and the league themselves are losing money because the white teams aren't paying out their contracts. They're not buying out their contracts. And then the fans themselves are no longer turning out for Negro League teams because they're going to go watch their favorite players on the major league teams.
Yeah.
The white teams.
Is it heading towards they're going to use her because she's a woman playing baseball?
Yeah.
Okay. I just see that on the horizon.
Yes. So,
Okay.
but the clock is ticking. She's seeing the writing on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
Her age, she's getting up there in
The
terms of an
opportunity
athlete.
alone, like, it's got to happen.
The Negro Leagues are declining, and she knows she's not going to probably get into the white team. So she's like, I got to do this. Serendipitously, the Indianapolis Clowns, which was run by Sid Pollock. Yeah, I don't love the name either.
I just sat up in my chair a little bit. I was like, bleh.
Yeah, I don't love that name. They were coming off a really terrific season. They had just won the 1952 Negro League Championship, and they needed a replacement for their second baseman who'd been picked up by a white major league team. That second baseman was Hank Aaron. You may have heard of him.
Oh, yeah.
Pollock was looking for someone who could pull in a crowd like Hank Aaron did and played second base. And wouldn't you know that Toni Stone played second base and most certainly knew how to pull in a crowd. So Toni accepted an offer from Sid Pollock to join the Indianapolis Clowns in 1953. She replaced Hank Aaron on second base. I mean, that's like a thing you'd want to talk about.
Yeah.
And now she has finally achieved the dream of being a professional baseball player, the first woman to do so.
That is so awesome.
Pollock knew how to sell a team, and he wasted no time in pushing Toni into the spotlight. And his first press release, because he wrote all the press releases.
Yeah.
This is a quote from his first press release. The latest masculine enterprise to fall before the advance of wearers of skirts and panties is the baseball diamond. What? The Indianapolis Clowns last week signed the first female baseball player in the history of the Negro American League. He also wanted her to wear one of those cute little skirts like they wear in the AAGPL.
Oh, she does not like skirts.
And she said, nope. I am not wearing that shit. And to his credit, he was like, he didn't keep pushing it. You know, I mean, I guess he could have said,
he got his
like,
answer and done.
So she got the same professional uniform all the men wore.
Awesome.
Our World, though, I guess was a magazine at the time, remarked that Stone wore, quote, an oversized men's shirt to accommodate her size 36 bust.
I am so fucking sick of this narrative that I am like so heightened and aware of lately of just...
Yeah.
And also, so the comment of back when they thought she was a teenager and saying she's got no time for dating, it's like, why are you so obsessed
with her sex life?
With a teenage, underage girl's sex life.
And body.
A
shapely lass.
Everything.
So it's gonna piss you off a little more, I promise. The media attention was insane. It was so intense. And she was like, she said that she felt like a goldfish.
Oh, all eyes on her.
So there's stories in every black newspaper about her. There are stories in some of the city papers in general, like the white papers. And Sid Pollock arranged for her to have a full feature in Ebony magazine, which is a big deal.
Big deal.
They took photos of her washing the windows while her husband lounged in the sun. They captioned a photo of her wearing a dress, quote, "Stone is an attractive young lady who could be somebody's secretary."
Oh my God. I'm going to punch a fucking hole in the wall.
They downplayed the significance of her playing, saying, "While most sports fans were sure the Clowns signed Toni merely as an extra box office attraction, the team features baseball comedy and Spike Jones-like music on barnstorming tours. The young lady has surprised everybody by turning in a business-like job at both second base and at the plate." You know, it ignores entirely the fact that she's already been playing ball for a decade.
Yeah, it's very cutesy and so just blown out of her. Like,
it very much is like she's not really doing this. This isn't real.
Yeah, she's a toy that they're playing with.
So Toni tried her best to fight back against the perception that she was simply a sideshow attraction on the team. This is a quote she gave a newspaper at the time. "I know what I'm doing," she said, "and what I am for. I don't want anyone playing me easy because I'm a woman, and I don't plan to play easy against them. I'm out here to play the game, and I'm sure I can take the knocks as well as anyone else."
Kind of reminds me of like going back to like what we opened with, of just showing up and doing your job and doing it well, but it's still downplayed.
Yes.
Because you're a woman and you're also a woman of color.
And Pollock added to this all the time. So he would tell like just blatant lies. First off, he continued to lie about her age, but he also inflated her salary, telling the media that she was earning $12,000 for her first season.
And what was she earning?
She was given $300 a month.
Holy
so
shit.
That's less than $4,000.
Yeah.
And she had a $2 a day meal allowance.
And
that $12,000, that would have been more than what Jackie Robinson got signed for in the majors. So just like before, Toni was also pulled during the 4th or 5th inning every game with the Clowns. This time it was because they had another second baseman on the team named Ray Neal, and he was like, "Well, I want to go to the major leagues, the white major leagues. So
yeah,
I need more playing time. You can't do this to me."
Oh yeah, I could totally see that happening.
But it was Toni who was pulling in the crowds, and they were not small. As they traveled through Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, etc., the crowds got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they got to Kansas City, which Kansas City is like the baseball capital. That is where you go for baseball. And they were playing the Kansas City Monarchs. And last year, the year before, they had filled, I think, 12,000 seats. And they this year had the goal of filling 14,000. But the day was already crazy when they got there. And there was like a huge parade, and they enter into the stadium, and over 20,000 fans showed up.
Holy shit.
It's not entirely due to Toni, but like it's very much due to Toni.
If she wasn't there, would they all be there? Probably not.
Well, their goal was 14,000 based on the fact that they'd had 12,000 in the seats the year before. They got 8,000 more fans. People. What was different? I wonder. But she didn't really play very well that day. I think she was probably really nervous.
Yeah, the nerves and just like you
pressure.
Showing up for 20,000 people.
Ugh. And like, especially because it's like you kind of feel that pressure that like they're here to watch you play, and some of them are here to watch you fail.
Ooh, didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And most of the time, though, actually the papers were pretty complimentary towards her, but it was always like sexist compliments. Even this female journalist, Dorothy Kilgallen, wrote this: "Metropolitan baseball scouts are more than a little interested in Marcinia Lyle Toni Stone. She belts home runs easily as most girls catch stitches in their knitting, and the sports boys are goggle-eyed."
Fuck you, Dorothy.
Yeah, right?
Fuck your shit.
So I don't know if Sid Pollock is telling the truth here because all of the mail that came for the players went through him. So if there had been other offers from other teams, she never knew. But he told the press that a Japanese league had offered to purchase Toni's contract for $25,000, but that his, quote, girl infielder was not for sale at any price.
It's a lie.
It's got to be a lie.
It's a lie.
And it's a shitty one.
Yeah.
But, he's really trying to, drum up press.
Yeah. This guy is working every
Yes.
angle. Yeah.
And he was being successful at it. People were continuing to turn out to see Toni play. But the more people who turn out to see her play, there are people there who are coming there specifically to see her fail. And one of those was a writer for Pittsburgh's black newspaper, which was called the Pittsburgh Courier. His name was Wendell Smith. He wrote a scathing opinion piece centered on Toni specifically, on her playing, and insisted that women belonged in the home and not on the baseball diamond. He also bemoaned the decline of the Negro Leagues, saying this: "It is indeed unfortunate that Negro baseball has collapsed to the extent it must tie itself to a woman's apron strings in order to survive."
Oh. Because how debased to have to watch women do sports.
Ugh.
Tragic.
This is how you know they're really in the decline. He also included stats from her playing which were incomplete. So they didn't take into account any of her barnstorming games, and they also neglected to mention the 10 years of baseball that she'd been playing prior to being on the Clowns. So it just seemed like she didn't have experience and she was bad at the game. The clincher of the article, though, for me, was he wrote an imaginary conversation between Toni and her husband.
Oh, so he lied.
Oh man, I wish I had made 2 copies of this so that you could read one side and I could read the other. Would have been really funny.
All right. I'm going to squirm out of my chair. I'm just wanting to throw something. Okay, hit me.
Husband: "How did the pitcher on the other team look today?" Mrs. Stone: "I'm telling you, that guy's just about as handsome as they come. When that big, strong beast looked down at me when I was batting, I got so excited I didn't know what to do. I won't ever get a hit off of him. I get so weak when he looks at me. I can't generate enough strength to bunt. What curves he has." Another selection of this. Husband: "Some bills came today, and one of them is for $350. Mrs. Stone: "I know. I went downtown yesterday and purchased a new glove, a silver mink glove. It really is something. I'm the envy of every woman in the stands on Ladies' Day."
Oh my gosh.
I think I had literal flames coming out of my face.
I feel like I'm going to explode. I feel like I'm just going to pop off of my chair. Oh my God. It's so stupid. Why?
I wanted to be like, what did women do to you, dude? That you would be this shitty.
To do this. Just to out and out just make up a narrative, and that honestly is what he thinks women are.
Yes.
Yeah.
It says so much about who he is.
Oh, way more of who he is than...
Yeah. It was just gross.
So gross. I feel so sorry for the woman that ever had to...
Yeah, marry him?
Yeah.
God. So Toni obviously wanted nothing more than to show this asshole up. But the truth was, she was reaching her mid-30s, although fans thought she was in her mid-20s. And she was plagued with injuries. She still had that same glove from the Goodwill.
Oh my gosh.
When she caught a line drive, that's when she injured 3 of her fingers enough to be out for 3 games. And she also pulled a ligament in her shoulder. Pollock was getting really antsy about her missing games because that would mean less money in ticket sales. So he started courting other women to be her understudy. None of them lasted, fortunately for Toni. They would they would be there for a couple games and then they would disappear. Things on the team weren't going well either. Her teammates harassed her quite a bit. Despite the fact that she was consistently raising her batting average, she got a .302 by midseason, which was really good. And she was bringing in money and therefore paying their damn salary. But there was a rumor that at the mid-season Negro League team meeting, when like all the owners meet, there was a rumor that it was decided that pitchers should take it easy on her. Whether or not that's true, I'm not quite sure. Pollock and his son specifically said he didn't think that the pitchers threw any differently to her after the meeting. But her batting average did go up. So the Clowns as a team weren't doing well overall in the league that season. And to make matters worse, the team got into a devastating bus accident. It was really wild. So it was a bridge that seemed pretty narrow. And, like it wasn't a 1-lane bridge, but it seemed like it was too small for like large vehicles to have more than one on there. So there was like a milk truck on one side. And so the milk truck was waiting so the bus could cross and then the milk truck would cross from the other side. But there was a farmer or whatever, somebody behind him had a tractor trailer, like a semi, but not our modern semis, but like a big ass truck.
Okay.
Behind this milk truck. And he didn't know why the milk truck was stopped. And he was impatient. So he just pulled out from behind. And then there was just a head-on collision between this tractor trailer and the bus. And I mean, it was a bad bus accident. But you don't make money if you don't show up to your games. So,
but were the players hurt?
Yes. Some players were quite hurt. And it said that they ended up limping onto the field. They were bruised, battered, bloody, like swollen eyes.
This is so shitty. This is such horrible conditions for players.
Yeah, it's really bad. And so, but that's how you made money. You had to show up to the game. Because in the Negro Leagues, it was like 60-40 from the ticket sales. So if you won, you got 60%. If you lost, you got 40%. Some places it was different. There was another issue that's hard to really get into her statistics as a player because the Negro Leagues didn't have uniform statistics. They often lost their scorebooks. So it was really hard to actually keep track of how well players did. So
that sounds shady.
It wasn't. It was just less formal. And that was another issue. Like Eva Manley was one of the people that was like, we got to get our shit together, guys.
Yeah, streamline.
And yeah, so she really pushed for that and really wanted the leagues to not mimic the way that the white leagues were playing, but at least the structure. She wanted the structure for the players. But that's not what happened. One thing I didn't mention before about what it was like for her to travel with the team was the sleeping arrangements.
Okay.
So you can imagine that she sometimes would not be able to go to the same places as the team. Sometimes when she was on those barnstorming teams, they would just sleep on the bus, like the whole team would.
Yeah.
But there were times when there were different obstacles. One of those was that she was often, or at least enough times, mistaken as the team's sex worker. That she was there because she was the only woman coming off of a bus full of men. They would mistake her as the person who was there to serve the team's sexual needs.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let her come in, and they would send her to the brothels in town.
And I'm imagining her teammates didn't stand up for her and say, no, she's part of the team.
No, neither did her the baseball manager, the coaches. No, nobody did. But it was in these brothels, though, that Toni felt sisterhood with other women for the first time in her life. The women in there encouraged her playing. They looked up to her. They were always excited to see her and wanted to cheer her on. Sometimes while she slept, they would wash her uniform, so she had a freshly laundered uniform in the morning. When she was complaining about how hard some of the hits were, that when she would take a ball to the chest, the women took her uniform shirt and sewed in padding to protect her chest.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes she would even find cash stuffed into her pockets. And asked about this later on, Toni would say, they were good girls. And they looked out for me.
You probably know what it's like.
I think she felt like an outsider, and they were outsiders.
Mm-hmm.
Her biography was very adamant about her not getting along with girls and other women for most of her life. I think a lot of it had to do with because she fell so far outside what they thought women should look like and act like and do. And so they made fun of her a lot. She got called a bulldagger a lot, which I thought was really weird.
I can imagine a lot stems too from her mother trying to push her into a image of what she wanted to see in her daughter, which I understand completely.
So I thought that story was really important to hear about because I think it humanized both Toni and women who are often cast aside as sort of meaningless or whatever. Like, our society really looks at women who perform sex work or have careers in sex work as like disposable.
Yes.
And I think that was something she was feeling on the teams. They treated her like she was disposable. So Toni ended the season with a decent batting average and lots of incredulous but pretty positive coverage, especially in black media. Sid Pollock felt his gamble had paid off by having a girl on the team, but he also thought he needed to safeguard his investment by getting more women on the team because it was very clear to him that she was going to continue to get injured. So enter 18-year-old Mamie Peanut Johnson, who, like Toni, had been a pitcher for an all-male semi-pro team in Virginia. And also like Toni, she'd been playing ball with boys since she was a young girl and desperately wanted to play professional baseball. She had even gone to an All-American Girls Baseball League tryout with her friend Rita, but she was turned away because she was black.
Yeah.
In fact, she tells the story about how when she'd gone, they told her to leave, and she picked up a baseball and threw it, and the girl who caught it was like, "Ow." And that's like an exact fucking scene in A League of Their Own.
It is, actually. Yeah.
Yes. So Mamie is signed by Sid, and that makes her the first woman pitcher in professional baseball. Another woman was added to the Clowns roster as well. Her name was Connie Morgan, and she was a softball player, an incredible softball player who had a .370 batting average. That is like, it's almost like the top of the league. And that's a pretty astonishing feat. But Sid Pollock always had some kind of tricks up his sleeve, and he arranged for Jackie Robinson to visit the day that Connie was trying out for the team. And he also made sure that there were photographers there to capture the moment.
Because why not? Oh, we're just having a spontaneous... Oh, welcome!
Oh, look!
Jackie Robinson's
Can you believe
here.
it? So he had the photographers take photos. He was like, "Hey, Connie, you want to meet Jackie?" And brought her over. And so there's this really iconic photo of her meeting Jackie Robinson, and she's just like gaga over him, I mean, it's her idol.
Yeah.
But he never invited Toni, who was also on the field, to meet Jackie. Toni was really upset with these new additions, and Sid had made it very clear that he was only going to allow one woman on the field at a time.
She probably feels like she's being edged out.
Oh, for sure she's being edged out. And if you have 3 women and you're only going to allow one out at a time, how much playing time can you get?
Yeah.
And then there's the issue of her new contract. He offered her $350 a month, which was a decrease in pay of $50 per month. Significant.
That's another edge out right there. I want to cut your pay.
After some back and forth chatting with one of the guys who had been one of the leaders of the team, she reached out to the Kansas City Monarchs to see if she could get a better deal on their team. And she did. They eventually offered her a contract for what she'd been making with the Clowns, which was $400 a month, and the option of like, I think a $100 or $200 bonus at the end of the season. So the 1954 season with the Monarchs would end up being her last season in ball. She didn't get much playing time, and when she did, she didn't perform very well. She batted the lowest average of her career, .197.
I'm imagining, too, with her injuries, she's probably not getting proper medical care.
No, not getting proper medical care. She's injured. She's also in her 30s. It's been a rough go.
Yeah, it's all piling up.
She turned in her uniform at the end of the season and went back to her husband in Oakland. Toni took a break from baseball altogether for a little while, but she didn't stay away forever. She decided to start coaching a little league team, and then she started playing baseball on both men's teams and lesbian teams.
Really?
Wink, wink, nudge, 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 wink. She did that throughout the 60s and 70s. When her husband turned 100 in 1984.
Okay, so when you were saying earlier when she went back to her husband, I was going to say, yeah, her 99-year-old husband as a joke, but
yeah.
Heyo.
So when he turned 100 fucking years old in 1984, he asked her to stop playing altogether, which she did.
Would you give in to a 100-year-old man's request?
She's 65.
Probably done.
So she was like, yeah, all right.
Okay.
Alberga lived to be 103 years old, and Toni acted as his caretaker and was with him until the very end. So the Negro Leagues officially shuttered in 1966, though the Indianapolis Clowns continued on in sort of a Harlem Globetrotters situation as an entertainment sports show until 1988.
Exhibitions?
Exhibition.
I said it.
Toni Stone's place in Negro Leagues baseball history was largely forgotten until the 1990s, when there was a major movement to recognize the contributions and importance of black baseball and black baseball players. The Negro Leagues Baseball Museum opened in 1990, and they featured photos of Toni Stone, Mamie Peanut Johnson, and Connie Morgan. For the first time, the women's contributions to black baseball were being formally recognized. Toni was also invited back to her hometown of St. Paul, Minnesota for Toni Stone Day.
Nice.
In 1985, she was inducted into the Women's Sports Foundation's International Women's Sports Hall of Fame. And in 1993, she was inducted into the Women's Sports Hall of Fame, which apparently is different.
Okay. I'm like really amazed that I didn't know that there's like a Black women's baseball museum, Hall of Fame, all of this. Like,
well, it's the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, and then they have an exhibit on the three women.
But yeah,
yeah,
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And in 1996, there was a play, a biographical play about her called Tomboy Stone that debuted at the Great American History Theater in St. Paul.
Wow.
Toni died of heart failure that same year on November 2nd, 1996 in Alameda, California. She was 75 at the time. In 2010, a full-length biography of Toni's life was written by Martha Ackman. That's the book that I was using. It's called Curveball, The Remarkable Story of Toni Stone. It was adapted in 2019 into a play, which debuted in 2020, but shuttered quickly because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Shit.
But not before they had once again resurrected the story of Toni Stone. So there were lots of articles, like the New York Times covered it. It was initially Uzo Aduba was supposed to play Toni Stone from Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
But she ended up having to drop out because of scheduling conflicts. But like, it was a big deal, the play. They did do some online showings, but the play shuttered in 2020 because of COVID-19. But it was nice to see her story resurrected because she had endured unbelievable racism and sexism and yet still broke down what I seem to think are impossible barriers.
Yeah.
But I want to leave you, instead of with my voice, with hers. This is a quote from a 1991 interview with the San Francisco Chronicle. "When you finish high school, they tell a boy to go out and see the world. What do they tell a girl? They tell her to go next door and marry the boy that their families picked out. It wasn't right. A woman has her dreams too. A woman can do many things."
Wow.
Yeah. I love that.
I do too.
A woman can do many things.
Yeah. And do them well.
Yeah. That's the story of Marcinia Lyle Tomboy Toni Stone.
That's quite a name. Yeah.
Yes.
I also love that peanut though.
Yeah, so that was Mamie. So here's the story about why I had so much research. I initially was going to talk about Mamie.
Really?
And maybe for a mini episode, I will talk about why I ended up not talking about Mamie.
All right.
But Mamie, I read a whole biography of Mamie first, whole lot of articles about Mamie, and they kept talking about Toni Stone. And I was like, well, it's like, technically Toni was first.
You got the bug and you went and looked.
So then I was like, well, I'm just going to read one thing about Toni. And then I was like, no, I like this story better. We're starting over. We're going to scrap it all. I'm starting over and reading this 400-page biography on her.
Jeez.
So that is the story of Toni Stone.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Thanks.
I loved it. Yeah.
And if you're a person who plays baseball, her story is great. But as I was looking stuff about her, I came across Monet Davis, who I had heard of before because I remember it showed up on like some headline at some point. But she was the first girl to play in the Little League Championships.
Wow.
She's only 19 now. And I think she's got quite a future ahead of her. And I hope someday we do see the gender barrier break in professional sports.
Yeah.
But I worry that like as I was reading it, I was like, the culture of the Negro Leagues baseball was really important. And it made me sad that when the race barrier broke, it meant the demise of this important institution.
Mm-hmm.
And I would feel similarly about women breaking into, like, let's say the NBA and then seeing the WNBA fold.
Yeah.
That would be very disappointing. I think there is room for both. I wish we had an all-black league of a major professional sport.
That you could have the choice.
Yes, that you could choose. I want to be around people who look like me and sound like me and support me and have a culture like me. And like, I won't get as much shit.
Mm-hmm.
I won't get treated this terribly. You hope anyway. Why not both?
Right. I just, the way women are treated in sports, even today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole thing of the March Madness.
Oh my God.
You saw that too?
Oh, so I was going to mention it in our opener, but I thought maybe that was the thing you wanted to talk about.
No, it wasn't.
So for listeners, if you don't follow March Madness or you're not sure what we're talking about, the women's team's weight room was a motherfucking
It was in
joke.
Indianapolis, wasn't it?
I believe so. Yeah, because the whole tournament's in Indianapolis.
Yeah. And one of the female players went on TikTok, which is where it's at apparently now. I feel like I'm going to have to TikTok soon.
I know. It's inevitable.
I'm almost 40, might as well.
I'm going to ruin the kids' games anyway.
She had done it turned viral of this video of her showing the difference between the men's weight rooms and theirs. And these are both elite athletes that are at the same tournaments going for the same trophies. And their weight room was like one set of different weighted dumbbells and like yoga mats.
Yes.
And the men had all of this machinery,
equipment.
everything you could think of, all of it.
Yeah, and you know what was ridiculous is that the first statement they put out was, "Oh, we just hadn't finished setting it up yet."
Fuck you!
Like,
no, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
You'd have that shit.
Dicks.
Then you set up the men's before, then you set up the women's. Then, like,
yeah,
no.
Exactly. So you still had it wrong, buddy.
Yes.
I was also thinking about that the other day. I don't participate in like March Madness brackets or anything like that. It's just not my thing. I do, however, usually watch a lot of the games. I usually watch the Sweet 16 on, just because I do like watching basketball. But whenever, like every year, wherever I've worked, every job, some guy sets up a pool and says, turn in your bracket and $5, right? Mm-hmm. No one ever specifies what bracket you're turning in, but the assumption is we all know what it is. It is the
male bracket.
men's bracket.
Yeah.
We're not going to even talk about women's basketball.
No.
And that is infuriating because they're more competitive, honestly. I watched the
women's basketball and women's soccer.
Women's soccer.
So much more.
Oh, so much better. I mean, like, I think men's basketball is fine to watch. Don't get me wrong. They're fine. But I think the women play harder and they are hungrier and it's a better game to watch.
Yeah.
You know, although I really hated, like, I hate that it's almost every year it's just one team dominates. But, you know, whatever. It
is what it is.
It's a good game to watch. I get really excited about watching the Sweet 16 women's teams. So, with that said, watch more women's sports.
There you go.
Support women in sports.
It's important.
It's very important.
All right. Well, that was a good one.
Thanks.
I really liked it.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. I really hope that you are enjoying what we're doing this season. We're enjoying the work we're putting out. It's a lot heavier duty work, so our episodes are sometimes longer. But we really appreciate your support, and we hope that you will continue to support us. And if you want to support us financially, we would also really love that. We have a store on TeePublic, and we have our Patreon. And also social media. We're dying on social media, guys. You guys got to help us out.
Just hit that like button on Instagram and hit that like button. Hit that like button on Facebook.
And tell like 4 of your friends. If all of you told 4 of your friends and only 2 of them liked us, that'd still be a lot of help.
Well, thank you so much. And
thank you, Lucas.
Yes, our editor, Lucas McIntyre. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Jennifer Finch, for our amazing kick-ass theme music.
All right, guys. We will talk to you next time.